full of energy for our second peer learning webinar of the African Continental Qualifications Framework project. So let me then start by sharing my screen. So, good morning, all colleagues from all different countries. We are very pleased to be here again with you. This is the second peer learning webinar of the ACQF project. As you remember, the first webinar took place just 2 weeks ago, 2nd of July, and the representative of the African Union Commission, Mr. Emmanuel Okonkwo, has officially opened this program of webinars. And so we are continuing working, of course, under the auspices of the project of the African Union Commission, carried out in a partnership with a number of institutions, including the European Union and European ETF, European Training Foundation, and GIZ. And all of you, that's the most important. Very briefly, let us go through this very first session, which is dedicated to just summarize what has been done so far and look ahead before then we go into the substantive part of this webinar, in which 3 cases, different cases, are going to be shared, as it is usual in a peer learning activity of this kind. So let me just then ask you all, as you know, this new way of working, so remote virtual meetings require a little bit of adaptation, learning, each one of us. And I would like just to remind that you should mute your microphones if you are not speaking. Also, please select the language. You can click in the bottom in that icon in form of a globe. You select your language, French or English, so you have access to the simultaneous interpretation. And please, during the various sessions, use the chat box to write your questions to each of the speakers' presentations. So this will be a way to stimulate then your sharing of ideas or of questions. So as I already said, this is the second peer learning webinar. We will have more, but this is the last one in July, and August, as you already know, we will have a break. So we will come back, we'll meet again in the beginning of September, 10th of September, for a third webinar. So, of course, we welcome you all, policy institutions, professionals, experts representing a wide range of countries. And as you all know, you have received the agenda. You know the agenda is very rich. So we will have 3 cases, an African National Qualifications Framework, then an overarching, let's say meta, let's say regional framework, from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and then another national qualifications framework from Europe. So this time we have Africa, Asia, and Europe in this sharing of experiences on national qualifications frameworks. As you will see, the case we have from Africa, from Southern Africa, Mozambique, will show us a case of a unified national qualifications framework being put together, being constructed. It's already in a very advanced stage. It's going towards approval. And the fact that this country is developing an integrated framework is a very important topic for discussion among all African stakeholders interested in the ACQF. You will see that Mozambique is building this integrated, unified national qualifications framework, building also on the basis, on the existing experience of 10 years of experience of a sub-qualifications framework in higher education, and more or less 5 years experience of a vocation, of a qualifications framework of professional qualifications that works as an ecosystem with quality assurance, credit system, register of qualifications. But we will have a detailed presentation on this. And I would like already to thank very much the representatives of Mozambique present here, representing CNAC, which is the National Council for Evaluation Quality Assurance of Higher Education. But we also have today with us representatives from the National Authority for Professional Education of Mozambique. Welcome all of you. Then the second case, as I already said, is the Qualifications Reference Framework of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It is an association of 10 countries. You will see a framework of 8 levels, overarching framework, not national. And then the third case is Ireland. And in the case of Ireland, you will note that the country does not call it a national qualifications framework, but a national framework of qualifications. This is why you have NFQ. This is the framework with probably the longest experience in the European Union, 10 levels. It has evaluated, it is now debating new and opening up to new challenges that are, of course, fundamental in the time we are now all crossing across the world. Let us also remind again all of you participants, stakeholders interested in the African Continental Qualifications Framework about the vision of the ACQF. Let us use now the acronym ACQF, standing for African Continental Qualifications Framework. As you know, it is in development, and the purposes of this framework as envisioned now by the stakeholders is that it will enhance comparability, quality, transparency of qualifications from all subsectors and levels of education, supporting people's lifelong learning outcomes. It will facilitate recognition of diplomas and certificates and mobility of learners and workers, work in complementarity with national and regional qualifications frameworks across the continent, and support the creation of a common African education space, promoting also cooperation and alignment between qualifications frameworks, national, regional in Africa and worldwide. And by doing this, the ACQF is open, receptive to innovation, open to good practice, global and African, to contributions from stakeholders. Naturally, that the ACQF is closely related and contributes to the major African Union policies in the domain of education and training, such as the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, which CISA 2025, which, as you know, includes priorities and indicators, and some of them, 2 of them, point and require the establishment of such a continental qualifications framework. So ACQF is not a national, but an overarching framework, so catalyst to develop framework and reference for comparison with other international frameworks. So a referencing qualifications framework. However, this is the vision as it stands now, and there will be time in the next 2 years to work in greater detail on all these elements of this future ACQF with your participation and your contribution, obviously. I would like also just very briefly to remind that according to the mapping study, the baseline analysis that is being soon finalized as the first phase of this project, out of 37 countries, we have identified the following, let's say, state of development of qualifications frameworks. And as we have already presented this scheme in our previous webinar, and we see here that approximately, let's say, 16 countries have national qualifications frameworks approved and implementation. Some more advanced, let's say, and with greater experience, longer experience than others. So this is the part of the pie in green. Then we have approximately 11 countries out of 37 whose qualifications, national qualifications frameworks are at the stage of development and consultation, so 30%. And then also a very good part, 6 qualifications frameworks that are at early stage, early thinking, let's say, of development. Let me also remind you the most important outputs of this ACQF process now from mid-2020 to mid-2022. So very soon, from September, with your participation, contribution, and consultation, the project will start the analysis of options, the feasibility analysis of the ACQF as a sustainable policy instrument, accompanied by then the technical annexes, the common guidelines for the ACQF proper as a technical and policy document, and capacity development that starts then more systematically with these peer learning activities. Very briefly, let me also remind that until the end of 2020, the capacity development program of the ACQF project is basically focused on peer learning. It's, let's say, a basic level to create a common understanding, a common language, common understanding of concepts on qualifications, frameworks of various types, various experiences. And so we will see immediately in the next slide how these peer learning activities are planned. They can, of course, be adjusted. And then in 2021, we will engage already in a phase 2 of more advanced level of learning, combining different forms of learning, training, e-learning, webinars, and also practical application. The cases are always cases, of course, African, national, and regional qualifications frameworks, but also various international cases. We hope that this combination of learning activities of capacity development allows then the continent to have a network of experts, ACQF experts, will contribute very much to sustainability in the future. The main themes of the peer learning program are all listed, as you have seen in your agenda. And they are also presented here on this slide. I will not go into detail, just mention that, of course, the themes are very much focused on NQFs, National Qualifications Frameworks, main concepts, instruments, types, through cases, concrete cases, regional qualifications frameworks, their interplay with the national level, the contribution to integration, to transparency and mutual trust. Then a very important topic about developing and implementing an NQF, different paths, perhaps common objectives, but different paths. Then the topic of learning outcomes, a fundamental principal topic for any qualifications framework, modern days frameworks. Then levels and level descriptors, how are they used? What is their role? How do they link with the design of curricula and qualifications? And then the last topic here in this list is how to make national qualifications frameworks more transparent and visible to end users, to the public, through registers, catalogs, interconnected databases of qualifications. These topics naturally can be adjusted, can be enriched, depending also on your request. If you have specific topics you would like to analyze, to debate, please send us a message. And also very briefly, an overview of the planning of peer learning activities in 2020. So you see July, the two first webinars. Today we have Mozambique, ASEAN, and Ireland. And then in September, we have the countries as proposed on the slide. So Mauritius, France, and Portugal in the third webinar. And then CAMES, we hope to have CAMES presenting the LMD reform, Morocco, and Arab qualifications framework, which is also a framework important for Africa, naturally. And then in October, Angola, Ghana, Eswatini, Zimbabwe in the fifth webinar. The sixth webinar, then Zambia, Cabo Verde, and then two African regional qualifications frameworks. And then in the last, as planned now, South Africa. Probably it would be also useful to have a debate on a sector qualifications framework. We have to see together with you which could be a relevant one in engineering or medical health sector or tourism or others, and a final debate and assessment. Of course, in the last workshop, in the first workshop, we talked about some concrete important definitions, the definition of qualifications, the definition of national qualifications framework. I just want to remind us all which were these definitions. And these two, in these two cases, they are taken, they are used as they stand here in the EQF recommendation of 2017. But there are, with small variations, some variations depending on context, these definitions more or less apply. And we have seen similar definitions in many of the African qualifications frameworks that we have been able to analyze through the mapping study. Now let us have a look at some of the most important, let's say, conclusions, let's say, from the experience, the three experiences shared in the webinar of the 2nd of July, the first webinar. We had then Kenyan National Qualifications Framework, Slovenian National Qualifications Framework, so two national qualifications framework, and then the EQF as an overarching meta framework. I tried then to summarize here the most important elements, features of each one of them. Interestingly, what we see is that the legal acts of both national qualifications frameworks have been adopted in similar periods between 2014, 2015 in the case of Slovenia, also the regulation of the Kenyan National Qualifications Framework. Both of them are 10 levels frameworks. They are, of course, of inclusive scope. In the case of Kenya, we have two pillars, academic pillar of qualifications, and then a professional pillar. In the case of Slovenia, there are types of qualifications, so educational type, vocational type, and a new type, which is called supplementary type. That is a reform, let's say, as called as a reform of qualifications in this framework. In both cases, we have achievements. We have also very interesting models of governance, setup, architecture. Perhaps let us just underline the case, in the case of Kenya, the qualifications ecosystem includes professional bodies, TVET bodies, basic education, and the steering committee for the NQF, for credit transfer and accumulation, for the learners database and register, RPL, so recognition of prior learning, and of course the Kenyan National Qualifications Authority is then the maestro, the facilitator, the coordinator of this ecosystem. Achievements are listed also, as you see, like standardized qualifications across disciplines and levels. It was not the case before. There was a big fragmentation. National accreditation and quality assurance standards, the internationalization of Kenyan qualifications, thanks to this increased credibility, coherence and trust, easier learner progressions, portability of qualifications, and a framework to engage with stakeholders and the industry. And as you remember, Dr. Mukwana said, consultation is fundamental for any national qualifications framework to really operate in an effective manner and reach its objectives. In the case of Slovenia, let me just perhaps underline two main points besides the ones already mentioned before. 10 levels, knowledge, skills, and competences are the domains of level descriptors. Then this country has also developed a very concrete and operational mechanisms, policy and mechanisms for validation of non-formal and informal learning. And this is possible thanks to the learning outcomes approach of the framework. Also, you have seen our colleague Urška Marentic presented a very interesting online register of qualifications with very innovative functionalities. Probably very briefly about the EQF. Unfortunately, at the first webinar, there were connection problems and we could not really finalize completely the presentation on the European qualifications framework. But you received the presentation, you received also the link to the EQF website where you can find a lot of information. Probably what is very important is to note at the moment when the EQF recommendation was adopted in 2008, there were only 3 national qualifications frameworks in the European Union. And now there are 43 in this community of the EQF, referring to 39 countries. 36 is a mistake, is my mistake, it's 39. So the EQF has also as engaged also in a discussion on new topics, for example, digital credentials, and also new perspectives such as micro credentials. We will see again now additional information. I would like just to underline a little bit, how does it work? This is important because actually our most important objective in this project is the creation of a overarching referencing framework for the continent. So therefore, these experiences are important. So the legal base, a legal base existing, and it's a legal base, a recommendation, not a binding, but all countries adhere and cooperate. It's an 8 levels framework with inclusive scope based on knowledge, skills, responsibility, and autonomy as descriptors for the levels. It promotes, and the most important objective is referencing and alignment of national qualifications frameworks. And these are processes that are done based on common criteria and procedures, and of course with consultation and debate. The reports upon approval of referencing are published for the wider public, for the world, for transparency. Then countries that have done their references, they start using EQF levels on their national qualifications documents and databases. Then a qualifications database that is including a growing number of databases from the member states or the community of the EQF interconnected is already in place. And the governance setup, very briefly, is the EQF advisory group, composed of the member states of the EU, other states of this community, as well as stakeholders, such as the social partners, students. Their role is to steer, to debate, and to co-decide. And this is the, let's say, the typical scheme of how a qualifications framework overarching nature, a regional, let's say, a referencing framework works. It is like a translation device that allows qualifications frameworks, national type, that are very different number of levels to relate with each other through this central pillar, which is the translation device of the referencing qualifications framework. I will finish very, very soon, and just would like to remind some of the questions from participants at our first webinar of 2 weeks ago. So questions such as, how are NQFs, namely the Kenyan NQF reacting, coping, and adjusting to the new highly challenging context created or prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Then also question about the issue of regulation and quality assurance of remote and digital and online learning. How is this being addressed? And this is particularly important nowadays, of course, in the period of pandemic. A participant asked also, are the shared definitions, for example, on NQF's qualifications to be adopted as they were formulated, or are they simply references and guides? This is an important question, of course. These definitions are references, guides, not imposing definitions. And one of the participants asked also a very important question about in the context of the continental education strategy for Africa, what can be this relationship between harmonization of curriculum in education and the development and the ACQF? And finally, some participants underlined very much the importance of partnerships, of debate and consultation of stakeholders to build a meaningful national qualifications framework. So we stop here this introductory session, which had the purpose to just recall us all what was discussed in our previous, in our first webinar. And we pass immediately the floor to Dr. Jeffy Mukora, Professor Ana Maria Nyampule, for the presentation of the NQF Mozambique, so the Unified Integrated Framework of Mozambique. Jeffy, Dr. Ana Maria, Professor Ana Maria Nyampule, the floor is yours. You can share your screen. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Dr. Jeffy Mukora, thank you very much for your presentation and sharing. Now, I just would like to remind all participants that you have received all these presentations. They are all available on the webpage of this webinar. My colleagues, Sylvia and Alina, can also share the link in case you have not yet had the opportunity to look at it. Thank you, Jeffy. You can start whenever you feel
okay.
ready.
Thank you so much, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody present. I'm going to present our work, which is being done with the participation from higher education sector, the general education sector, professional education sector, and other stakeholders such as professional bodies and professional associations. And this work of the development of the National Qualification Framework is being coordinated by the Council on Quality Assurance and Accreditation in Higher Education. So I'm going to present this document moving towards an integrated, comprehensive national qualification framework. The objective of the presentation is to share with the ACQF community, the path which is being taken, the trajectory of the development of a comprehensive qualification framework in Mozambique. And the summary of the presentation, I will look at the national education system in Mozambique, mapping the qualifications that are produced within the system, and then presenting how Mozambique is moving from a qualification system to a qualification framework, and then discuss the two sub-frameworks that has been introduced, the National Qualification Framework for Higher Education and the National Qualification Framework for Professional Education. And then we'll make a proposal of the new unified National Qualification Framework, which is being produced in an incremental model, where we start building the National Qualification Framework from the sub-frameworks that have already existed. In terms of the national education system in Mozambique, it is composed of 6 subsystems. We've got the preschool education, the general education, adult education, professional education, education and training of teachers, that is teacher education, and higher education. And it is very important to note that in these subsystems, there are qualifications that are being produced in the subsystems. So the whole idea is to make these qualifications that are being produced in the system, to make them visible and to valorize them so that they can have some value. So that is the whole idea, to recognize all the qualifications that are being produced in the system and give a value to them. In terms of the general education subsystem, it is composed of, according to the law of the National Education System, law number 18 of 2018 of December. We've got primary education and secondary education, where primary education is in 2 cycles, the first cycle and the second cycle. The first cycle is from grade 1 to grade 3, or first class to third class. And at the end of the third class, they need to progress into the second cycle. So they've got what they call bulletin, the passage. It's a grade 3 ticket. So that it's a ticket which they are given so that they can progress to the second cycle. And in the second cycle, it's from grade 4 up to grade 6. And then they get something, a grade 6 certificate, so for them to progress to the first cycle of secondary education. If they don't pass that grade 6, then it means they cannot proceed to grade 7, they have to repeat. And it is very important to say, according to this law, grade 1 to grade 9, it's compulsory education. So the students will remain at school until they've completed the first cycle of secondary education, which is grade 9. And grade 9, that is where we are going to have our first exit from the general education system. So that is the qualification we will recognize and give value in a national qualification framework we are going to talk about, because that is our first exit point from the general education. And then still on the general education, we have got the second cycle, which is from grade 10 until grade 12. and they will leave that second cycle with a grade 12 certificate that will give them access to higher education. It is also important at this stage to explain that the general education system in Mozambique, students, they spend 12 years in the general education system, 12 years from grade 1 to grade 12. Whereas other countries, like for example, Botswana, Zimbabwe, students, they spend 13 years. They can spend 13 years in the general education to have access to university education. So that example, that difference is very important because that will help us to determine at which level will our grade 12 certificate can be located in the national qualification framework that will give them access to higher education. Where does higher education start in our framework in comparison to other countries which have got 13, grade 13, where in other countries they're called A level and all that. So this is the picture of the general education, where is primary and secondary education. We are having two qualifications with exit points, grade 9 and grade 12. And in terms of higher education, we have got 3 cycles. The first cycle is the licentiate degree, which is like the honors. The honors, we don't have the bachelor in the first cycle. It's a 4-year licentiate program. Then the second cycle, we have got the master, and the third cycle, we have the doctorate. So we will show how these qualifications that are being produced in a national education system will fit into a national qualification framework. In terms of professional education, we have 2 levels in professional education, the basic level and the medium level. And at the end of the basic level, the students will receive a basic professional education certificate. And at the end of the medium level, the students will receive a medium professional education certificate. For them to go, yeah, what I was saying is that okay, I think we've got a problem with our system. I don't know whether you can be able to hear me now.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay.
That you don't have 2 devices connected, otherwise we have duplication.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So what I was saying is that for students to have the basic level, there are routes which they can be able to take. They can do the certificate vocational 1 and certificate vocational 2. They can also do the occupational certificates 1 and 2, and that will lead them to the basic professional education certificate. And we will see that every year, if they finish the certificate vocational 1, they can leave, they can exit the system. And so these will be the qualifications which will be recognized in the system. And for the medium level, we also have a certificate vocational 3, 4, and 5, which will lead to the professional, to the medium professional education certificate. But students can still leave when they finish certificate vocational 3, certificate vocational 4, or occupational certificate 3, 4, and 5. So we will see, this is how professional education is organized, and we will see how all this information will be used to construct a national qualification framework. And then we will look at the stages of the development of the national qualification framework. What we have seen is that the system produces qualification, And we are moving from a qualification system to a qualification framework. What does that mean? It means that the traditional way of organizing learning, organizing curriculum, organizing teaching, we have to shift from that traditional way to a new model, which is outcome-based. And then that is why we are saying we are moving from a qualification system which was organized in terms of disciplines and subjects, and moving from the way in which learning has been organized to a new form, to a new model, which is the outcome-based approach or the competence-based approach. And this stage started in 2010 with the higher education adopting the qualification framework for higher education, which is Kwanges. And currently, the country has two sub-qualification frameworks in the process of implementation. We've got the higher education qualification framework, which has been introduced by decree number 30 of 2010, which is the regulation on the national qualification framework for higher education. And we have the national professional qualification framework introduced by law 6 of 2016 on professional education, amending the law on professional education of 2014. And so these are the two sub-frameworks that exist. The first one for higher education in 2010, and the second one for professional education in 2014, and then amended in 2016. And then we will present the new unified comprehensive national qualification framework, which is work in progress, which I've said earlier on in my introductory remarks that it is an incremental model, which means that we are using the sub-frameworks that exist to build a national qualification framework. In terms of the qualification framework for higher education, this was produced with the aim to integrate and coordinate all the qualifications of different institutions to ensure transparency in access, progression, and quality of qualifications in a relationship with the labor market and society, with the following objectives: to establish parameters and common criteria for the design of qualifications to allow the comparability of these qualifications, and also to establish coherence and transparency in the higher education system, and also to facilitate the harmonization within the higher education system of the region with a view to improve mobility, employability, and competitiveness. Whereas professional education, which was established by Law 6 of 2016, the law defines and interlinks all pillars of the subsystem of professional education, including the scope, the principles of the National Qualification Framework for Professional Education, the system of credit and accumulation and transfer in professional education, and also the quality assurance system. So this is integrated in the law on professional education. And the qualification framework for professional education defines 5-level qualifications of 2 types. We've got vocational certificates, like I've already said, with levels 1 to 5, and also occupational certificates with levels 1 to 5. And in terms of qualification framework for professional education, this was, the aim was to ensure that the programs, curriculum content, and final outcomes of professional education in terms of qualifications and competencies of the workforce, with the aim to improve quality and relevance for professional education. The objectives are to promote a professional education that responds to the requirements of the labor market and the development needs of the country, to ensure mechanisms for permanent dialogue with stakeholders, and also to establish a framework for equivalence between professional training acquired in the institutions and outside of the institutions, and also to encourage flexible learning pathways within the education and training system within the professional education sector. So this is the building blocks which are helping us to build a national qualification framework. We have the framework for higher education, we have the framework for professional education. While we still don't have a framework for general education, but that will be built in within the national qualification framework. So when I say towards a unified national qualification framework, unified, what we are unifying a framework for higher education, a framework for professional education, and to be a framework for general education as a comprehensive framework. That is a framework which will cater for all the qualifications that are being offered in the country. So the draft act of the new unified NQF, which is already ready, almost ready for adoption and approval, defines 7 key objectives of this national qualification framework. To explain why do we need that national qualification framework in the country, it is to facilitate clarity and articulation of all qualifications that are being offered in the country in an integrated framework and promote competence-based education or outcomes-based education, and also to establish coherence and transparency of qualifications in the frame of the national system of education, and to facilitate mobility and the recognition of degrees and other qualifications within the country and outside the country, and also to define parameters which can be used to compare qualifications within the national higher education system, also to facilitate horizontal and vertical mobility of holders of qualifications within the national system of education, also to ensure the portability of qualifications, mobility of learners and workers, and lifelong learning within the system, and also within the SADC Africa and in the world, and also to facilitate alignment of our national qualifications framework with our national qualifications with the SADC qualifications frameworks and other qualifications in Africa and in the world. And that will help to facilitate the access to qualifications offered within the context of the national system, national education system. So these are the key objectives why we are introducing a national qualification framework, building from what already exists in the country. That is why we are always referring to an incremental model. And in terms of the conceptual technical design of the national qualification framework, I will talk about the scope. That is the national qualification framework will encompass all the existing qualifications of the national education system, public and private, and not only existing qualifications, but it will encompass new qualifications that will be introduced in the system. And in terms of levels, we've adopted a 10-level structure where general education will occupy level 1 to 4, even though we still have some contestations in this area. Higher education will occupy level 5 to 10, and professional education will be cutting across the qualification framework. In terms of level descriptors, 3 main domains of knowledge descriptors have been adopted: knowledge, skills, autonomy, and responsibility. And we have also established the 10 competencies which are yet to be acquired during the knowledge process during the process of teaching and learning. So we have got the 3 main domains, and 10 competencies which has been adopted. In terms of learning outcomes, we have adopted the learning outcomes approach. It's well rooted in the framework for higher education and in the framework for professional education, which is defined as a principal component of conceptual technical design and implementation. So a learning outcome approach or competence approach has been adopted. And our qualifications and curriculum design, delivery and assessment are all competence based. So the whole idea is not just to
Please mute the microphones.
Tutto, ma ti fatica associazione, tutto
Colleagues.
associazione ما تفتشوا صغير لسه أمور ما تم ده بإن من 30 و5 دول 20 وكم دول أنا ما خلف
Colleagues, can you mute the microphone if you don't mind? Okay. Thank you. Jeffy, you can continue. Sorry for this interruption. Thank you, Jeffy.
To a qualification framework, it's not an easy goal because you change the way the teachers have been teaching, thinking about learning and the way students were learning to adopt this outcome-based approach, which is student-centered and all that. So a shift in terms of how the qualifications have been designed, it has to shift so that they can accommodate the competence-based approach and even the curriculum design. So this is the shift we are talking about from a system to a framework where the qualifications, curriculum design, assessment has to be outcome or competence-based. And also we have also adopted the credit system, the system of credit and accumulation mandatory for all programs and qualifications. For higher education, one credit unit is equal to 25 to 30 hours of learning workload. And for professional education, one credit unit is 10 notional hours. And I think there is still a lot of work which has to be done so that we can harmonize our internal credit system. And in terms of our quality assurance, the higher education qualification framework operates in close articulation with the assurance system. Okay, I was saying that the National Qualification Framework for Higher Education, it operates in close articulation with the quality assurance system. It's actually in the quality assurance, we are coordinating the development of a higher education qualification framework or preparing the implementation of a higher education framework. So the framework for higher education is located in the Council on Quality Assurance and Accreditation. And these council accredits programs and courses that lead to qualifications. So where we establish a link between the quality assurance we do, we quality assure the route to gain a qualification and the processes that will allow somebody to, at the end, to achieve a qualification. And the framework for professional qualification is a component. It's a component of a quality assurance framework, as I have already indicated in my earlier slides. And in terms of recognition of prior learning, the law 18 of 2018 on the national education system acknowledges the possibility of recognizing and attributing value to learning acquired outside of formal training settings. And in this regard, the framework for professional qualifications validates and certifies learning that is acquired outside formal training settings and enables the access to regular courses offered by the formal training sector. Professional education have already have a model of how to recognize, how to assess, and how to accredit learning that is being offered outside of formal training sessions, training settings. So I think this is a very good achievement. In higher education, we still don't have a model of recognizing this type of learning, but the discussions have already started so that recognition of prior learning becomes a component of the whole national qualification framework, but it is visible within professional education. And the conceptual and the regulatory framework for recognition of prior learning is in development in the consulting stage in the professional education sector. In terms of curriculum development, to establish the link between the national qualification framework and curriculum development is very key, because at the moment there are uncertainties. People, they don't actually understand the idea that a curriculum is one thing, and the qualification that delivers that is obtained is one other thing. So we are trying to get that right, and with an understanding that the NQF provides a framework of reference for curriculum development. So we are adopting a model that instead of starting with curriculum development and then develop qualifications, the other way around. It is the qualifications that should be developed first to allow a curriculum development, because in the qualification you state the outcomes that will be achieved at the end of the program, and then the curriculum will state how that will be happening throughout that journey. And we've got trust. Trust is also a technical component, which is building communities of trust, and consultation throughout every stage of development is key to the successful implementation of the national qualification framework. Trust between the key main actors, trust between the actors and the beneficiaries of all this, because we have to understand that the students and they will not come to the agency and climb a qualification ladder that happens in educational institutions. So they should distrust students, the society, the community, should feel confident, to have the trust that the qualifications that they are obtaining will give them a life, continue to do a lifelong learning. Coming back to all I've been saying, this is our proposal for a national qualification framework that is got level 1 to level 10. This is a proposal. We still need to clear one or two things to build consensus. There are still areas of contestation between the key stakeholders, but we have our grade 9 on level 1 in the general education. Why are we having grade 9 on level 1? Because I've explained that even if they have got an examination on grade 6, but they don't leave the general education system. Is compulsory until grade 9. So the first exit point is grade 9. So we are allocating grade 9, that certificate which is obtained in grade 9 in the first level 1 of the National Qualification Framework. And then we have grade 10, grade 11, and then grade 12. We've got another exit point in the general education, and this one is occupying level 4, which will give them access to higher education on level 5. Other countries, we have been looking at other countries in the SADC region, where other countries with general education that goes to A level, which is 13 years of schooling, their higher education will start on level 6, and level 5 will be occupied still by the general education because they spend 13 years in the schooling system, general education. So the difference which you will see with other national qualification frameworks in the region, except Zimbabwe and South Africa, we have higher education starting from level 5. And we don't have any qualification at present in level 6, but there is room because the bachelor which we had has been removed. So our licentiate, the honors degree, will start at level 7, but we also still have other licentiate degrees which are on level 8, which include medicine and some engineering programs, which they will spend because they spend more than 4 years in the faculty. So we will have a professional licentiate, for example, medicine on level 8, and other general honors degrees on level 7, and we've got our master on level 9 and our doctorate on level 10. This is the general higher education link. When it comes to a professional education, the authority which Eduardo has been talking about, the idea is that we need to resolve a contestation where vocational certificate level 5, it's being placed on level 4 instead of being placed on level 5 of the National Qualification Framework. So why are we locating vocational certificate on level 5? Because the vocational certificate on level 5, it gives access, direct access to higher education. So it will be comparable to grade 12, which is at level 4. So the benchmark we are using to locate grade 12 at level 4 is the region where secondary education, general education, will occupy level 4 or level 5, but depends on the years of schooling, which those with 13 years, their general education goes until level 5, but ours with 12 years, it will go to level 4. So that's why the vocational certificate level 5, we have to...
Alors, il reste encore quelques invités. Hein?
So the vocational certificate level 5, it has to be comparable to the grade 12 because they will all give access to higher education. But the other way of resolving the problem is to look at the level descriptors of level 4 and look at the vocational certificate level 5 and the grade 12 if it complies with the descriptors of level 4 or level 5. So I think the dispute or the contestation will be resolved sooner rather than later, looking at descriptors and see where exactly a qualification is going to be located. And it is very important to highlight the fact that this qualification framework to us is just a reference framework. The qualifications will not be will not be registered on this framework. We will see another register which is linked to this, because this is a framework which is a reference, and the qualifications which are being produced. For example, we only have the master, but we have got different types of masters. A master in education, master is also those qualifications, specific qualifications, will be registered on a register or on a catalog, which I'm going to briefly present at the moment. That was this one is in Portuguese, so the one I have presented is in English. And then the catalog or the register, which has been developed by ANEP, which is the authority, national authority for professional education. They've already developed the framework for professional education, and that framework with this register will function. It is also important to mention that this register, it can register qualifications and also modules. The qualifications that are going to be registered, or the modules that are going to be registered in this catalog, they have to satisfy criteria which has been established, because it's not all qualification that can just fit in the register. They have to obey and observe the criteria that has been defined by the reference framework, the qualification framework, which has defined the criteria, and this criteria will be observed when you register your qualification in a catalog. So we have in the country a catalog for professional education, and the idea is to have, for example, a catalog for higher education, a catalog for general education, and at the end we have a national catalog that will be built from the three different catalogs. So we have got a starting point, and then we will develop those models, then incremental mode, and then we have our national catalog at the end. That is the model we are adopting, and this is us, the Council on Higher Education, the Council on Quality Assurance and Accreditation in Higher Education. This is where we are located in Somashet, Maputo, and you are all welcome to visit. This is our website, and thank you for your attention. Merci beaucoup et obrigada pela atenção dispensada. Thank you.
Many thanks, Jeffy, for the presentation and for the very detailed, comprehensive discussion on a number of issues, important points for any development of a qualifications framework, particularly of this kind, which is an integrated framework based on existing sub-frameworks. Thank you very much. Since we are a little bit lagging behind with our time, if you don't mind, we would move immediately to Dr. Megawati Santoso. Dr. Santoso is talking with us, sharing the experience of ASEAN Qualifications Reference Framework. And Dr. Santoso is in Indonesia, so with a very distant in terms of place in terms of time. So 6 hours difference times distance compared with the place where I am now. Dr. Santoso, would you like to share your screen and lead us, help us understand your experience as an overarching regional qualifications framework, 10 countries? Thank you very much in advance.
All right, I will share my screen right now. Is it okay?
Yes, please.
So, are you able to see the screen? This presentation?
Yeah, you can, if you like, yeah, exactly. Slide mode, thank you. Thank you very much. You have 30 minutes for your presentation. Thank you. Colleagues, you can, of course, write your comments and questions in the chat box. It has been very active so far. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From ASEAN, we send you all greetings and hope that everybody is doing well and healthy as well. So today I would like to present information regarding the AQRF, as mentioned by Eduarda, and this is the outlines that I would like to share with you regarding the objective, main features, mechanism, implementation strategy, and challenges. I know that everybody is very busy right now, and I hope that I can finish this presentation before 30 minutes, but I don't have the time right now. So Eduarda, let me know if my time is past, okay? So this is the objective of the AQRF actually. The outcome is to have the more prosperous Asian community, because we have an, sorry, excuse me, Asian vision that we would like to have as more prosperous single community as a regional nation in Asia. And AQRF have influenced many of the Asian member states to start with establishment with the national qualification framework. The establishment of national qualification framework, as already understood by everybody, is actually can be used to promote more quality and accountability of human resource supply system. So far, for example, for the case of many Asian countries that have a very large population like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, I guess three of these are very large community population. We have thousands of higher education institution. Like Indonesia, we have about like 4,700 higher education in this country alone, and then 16,000 providers for trainings, etc. And they don't have any ladder to refer for the quality, for the qualifications. So the development of national qualification framework is actually to promote the more quality and accountability. And when we have that, that's develop the mutual trust and respect among the Asian member states. Everybody can understand the system of the quality assurance, the system of education of each country, and we understand the challenges of that. So it starts generating the mutual trust, and then based on that, the respect and recognition come along with that. And if we have that, then we would like to have a better mobility of students and workers, especially for the community. Many of Asian member states, students or workers would like to work not only in Asian countries, because in Asian countries we have a similarity of food, of culture, etc. And they would like to have better opportunity for the international influence views or something like that. So they like to work and study in Europe, in Africa, in Mid East, in Australia, New Zealand, United States, etc. But because the vision is for Asian communities, then these 10 member states would like to have a stronger condition for all of us, for all the 10 member states. We don't want to have only Singapore that is very high, and then the other member states is left behind. With doing this, we ask Singapore to let us know what things that need to be done to have a better quality education, for example, and we learn from each other. That's the best thing to have this AQRF along the way. And then if that's happened, the mutual trust happened when somebody from any AMS working in some country, for example, family Indonesian workers, professionals go to Brunei and they bring the family there. So they understand the qualification in the Brunei system, education system. They will be able to understand where our children will go to school. And then when they come back to Indonesia again, what is the qualification that they have after they go to Brunei, for example. So that's actually the purpose of this AQRF. And then this is a specific purposes. So with the AQRF, we have a communication platform for explaining member states qualification system. You know, every AMS have different qualification systems. Some of AMS following United States system, the other following European system or Commonwealth system. The other one is combining both systems, etc. So using the AQRF, we have a communication platform for that. And the AQRF also becoming a facilitator for mutual support of national qualification system in ASEAN, as I mentioned, because the regional is already there, then this regional send a message to the national, well, there's already a regional one. Why don't you make for your national qualification yourself? Something like that. And as I mentioned, that is for mobility, for employment appropriate to qualification within the Asian and beyond. The outcome is actually to build an Asian zone of trust that facilitate mutual recognition of jobs and skill qualification in the Asian labor market and the mobility of persons. So this is the main features of the AQRF framework. This is a reference framework. We have a consensus that we don't want to change or influence national qualification framework. This is just a reference. That's the consensus of us. But even though there is a consensus, as you may see, all the AMS that develop their qualification framework after the Asian qualification framework is there, usually following this framework. They don't develop, for example, because this is the features. We have 8 level. The 8 is the highest level qualification, and because we have this 8, the later AMS that develop the national qualification framework usually following the AQRF. So even so, in consensus, we said we don't want to influence your qualification, national qualification in your country. You are free to develop your own level or something like that. But in fact, factually, this AQRF helps the AMS who has not developed the national qualification framework to follow just this, because it's already regional. And this is the mechanism. So the mechanism is we would like to building first the national qualification framework, and then we follow for the regional qualification framework. Right now, UNESCO starting to have a world reference level or something like that. This is ongoing project that might be as another reference that we will look at that. The national qualification framework has influenced very much with the national community, and because we are following the regional qualification framework, then we start entering the regional community. Now, for really doing the mobility, as I mentioned, we have to have a mutual recognition, mutual trust. And this only happening if we have a national qualification agency, national qualification authority, national quality assurance system that is very robust, that is very good and trustworthy. Without the national quality assurance system, I think the mutual trust is not there. So that's another wonderful thing coming from the AQRF. Once the AQRF is being established, it sends a signal to all Asian member states that every country start to look at their own quality assurance system more vigorously to make the system more robust, so that everybody will trust everybody in the regional community. So the implementation right now for the AQRF is like this, but we have so many other things that we will do. But for the first stage, we implement the AQRF for the referencing processes, so that it will become a communication platform for everybody. So rather than each country talking to another country individually, we just talk to the AQRF once, and then with this, we can talk to 9 other member states right away because of the referencing like this. So for the implementation, I would like to start just giving some example. I'm using the Indonesia because Indonesia has a large scale of the education system, and then has different level from the AQRF. The rest of the AMS has the same level as AQRF. So AQRF has 8 levels, other AMS has 8 levels. So the referencing process is a little bit easier because of the same level. But for Indonesia, we have a 9 level IQF like this, and we have to formalize everything from the formal education, non-formal, informal education, and then we have also to reference to other uh, more universal level, like I said, for example, for communication to other, because Indonesia has a combination following United States system and also Commonwealth system. So using ISET is very good to let other people understand. If the Commonwealth, they will understand about the ISET. So what we have to do during the referencing, this is the AQRF domain. They only have 2 about knowledge, knowledge comprehension and skill, and then application of this knowledge and skill towards the autonomy of their work and responsibility. So, but many AMS National Qualification Framework domains has another domains like moral and ethics for each IMS. Excuse me? Oh, okay.
Colleagues, please mute your microphones. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh,
you can
okay.
continue, Mega. I'm sorry.
All right. Very sorry about that. Okay.
No.
So has another domain like moral and ethics. Beside the work competencies responsibility like this, the knowledge work competency is the including to this domain, 2 domains. But moral and ethics are very strong in Asian member states. Every national qualification framework has that. But in the regional framework, we put this moral and ethics in the application. When we have a responsibility in application, is already embedded for the moral and ethics domains. So this is the final referencing processes. So we have, Indonesia have 9 levels and AQRF has 8. After vigorous discussion with all stakeholders in Indonesia, 36 ministry and institution, we have industry to be involved, professional association, etc. This is the most accepted best fit condition for Indonesia. So there is 2 level 3 and 4 that is close to level 3. For level 3 itself is a little bit the same with level 3. The 4 is a little bit more than 3, but cannot reach the level 4, the AQRF. So what is the next implementation that is very important? So right now, 4 countries big with the biggest population, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, has already reference to the AQRF. That's why we can talk to each other using the AQRF level actually. So with this, for example, level 4 in Indonesia will be the same, will be equivalent to level 3 in Malaysia, for example, because Malaysia is also have 8 levels, Philippines has 8 levels, and then Thailand also changed from 5 levels to 9 levels, and then finally to 8 levels. So by doing this, we can talk to each other using the AQRF. The best thing about this referencing is the criteria 11 for the referencing, that following the referencing processes, all certification and awarding bodies are encouraged to indicate a clear reference to the appropriate AQRF level on the new qualification certificates, diplomas issues. So by doing this, we not only put the stamp for the country, but also stamp for the Asian if the country would like to use it for a better communication platform. So this is our strategy, the next strategy, that after the AMS doing the referencing to the AQRF, then AQRF will start talking with the AQF, will start talking with the New Zealand, etc. So that the communication is becoming larger and larger. Rather than talking one nation to another, hundreds of nations. So this is the best strategy. We talk to regional, and the regional talk to the regional. What is the challenge of this? What we do? There's lots of challenges. This is just four that I mentioned. We have diversity and disparities, many in qualification, in government regulation, in quality culture, and also institution and program. But we understand that we can talk through the quality assurance system and agency. So if we have a robust quality assurance system that is trustworthy, I think the qualification and then quality culture will provide the mutual trust and mutual recognition that is needed for all of us. So just to give you some information, we have three types of the qualification framework in AMS. Type 1 is supply side. I think mostly everybody using this type 1 supply side, which is education in the country, is giving the having a learning outcomes, and those learning outcomes is leveling to the qualification framework. Type 2 is demand side. It's not talking about the education. It's talking about the demand of the human resources there. What kind of qualification is being utilized in that country. So I will talk about these two. And then this, the third one is combination, a neutral reference for supply and demand sides. So this is, for example, the first type 1 is, I give the example about Malaysia, and then Philippines, and Thailand, right? This is Thailand. So as you can see here, Malaysia, for example, they talk about the learning outcomes of the supply sides, the education system there. They have a training center, they have trainings, courses, and then also the degree, and then they put it learning outcomes into the levels. As you see, most of this qualification framework does not recognize different sector at the highest level like this. Okay, so this is the same like Philippines. Okay, for level 6, 7, 8 must be for the higher education. This is all talking about the education system, the supply push. Supply push of the country. What is the education system there? What is the learning outcomes? And then they make a leveling on that one. And this is, for example, for Thailand qualification framework. In the beginning, they have a 5 level for the higher education, starting from advanced diploma until doctoral degree. So finally, after we have AQRF, they change. No, before we have the AQRF, this is the level up to 9, following like Indonesia. So they combine all the training sectors in the qualifications framework. But still, on the top, 5 to 9 is about the qualification titles for the higher education. Again, supply push. After this, Thailand changed to the 8th level. I haven't got the picture or the image of the latest, the 8th one. Why they changed to 8? Because it's the same like a AQRF qualification framework. As I mentioned, that AQRF committee and in Asian agree, we make a consensus that we will not ask for the country to change everything, but if they would like to change, is their decision, something like that. And Thailand also following the AQRF level, change from the 5 to 9 and finally 8. So the type 2 is the Singapore, for example. So Singapore is an international hub. Everybody from all over the world coming to Singapore to work. So if Singapore has the qualification framework based on education, that will be terrible. That will be headache for Singapore to check the education of each country, because so many people come from different background, etc. So what Singapore do is the demand side, demand pull. So for example, if you would like to work as an accountant in the Singapore, they have, for example, probably I don't remember exactly, like probably 2 levels of accountant: technician and certified accountant. For the technician, you have to have this kind of competence, skills, attitude, the same thing, the qualification. For the certified accountant is the same like that. So they don't care about your education background, but if you would like to work in Singapore, then you have to have this qualification. For example, Singapore will not talk about the education becoming a medical doctor, but they will have a qualification for medical doctor. If you would like to work in Singapore, this is the qualification of the medical doctor. So they have the demand pull system qualification. So this demand pull qualification, they cannot have a national gathering like that, because each sector have difference. For example, this sector of the professional have 3 levels, the other one has 5 levels, the other one has 2 levels. They don't talk to each other. It's just for their own sectors. So this is the type 3. The type 3 is for Indonesia. For my country, we only have this 1 to 9, like EQF, like AQRF. So this 1 to 9 is free from the education background. They can be achieved through the formal education. This is the formal education from starting from primary, high school up to diploma 1, etc., until the medical doctor. Doctoral degree. But they can also achieve by career in their industrial work, starting from operator, technician, and then up to expert. Or they can do by experience based, a self learner. If they can have a qualification proof that they have that, they may have that. Or also by professional certification. So I just would like to go back a little bit here, the picture, so that you can understand. Sorry, you can have more information here. So like this is just for higher education and formal education, but we have a certain level from non-formal and informal, and they can use the qualification for the benefits. So this is the type 3. In the type 3, sorry for that. In the type 3, as you see, we have, for example, the qualification for the students of medical doctor. It will be at level 6. They have the education for the medical doctor. And then we have level 7, 8, and 9 for the medical doctor itself. Please, just a minute. I will close it. Sorry for that. I just closed the door so that it will not bother you. So, so the framework has both sides, the supply and demand pull. We have the level for the medical, the graduate of the medical medicine, but we also have the level for the medical doctor itself. As I said, the medical doctor, the general education for the medical doctor in level 6, but once you become a general medical doctor, it will be level 7. The specialized can be like level 8 and 9. The general education for becoming engineer is level 6, but the engineer can be level 7 and level 8, for example, like that. So this framework accommodate for all people in Indonesia, because for Indonesia only 28% up to 30% people, young person that can go to higher education here. The rest are here. The rest are here. So we are also caring for that 60 something percent of Indonesian young people that cannot go to the higher education, formal education, but they are very have a qualification. They are expert on they are doing. Especially, for example, in the terms of the arts in Bali. In Bali, for example, they are a person who doesn't go to school, but they can perform the orchestra and compose in the orchestra with gamelan, and then they perform together with the doctoral music from Europe, something like that. So that's qualification for type 3. And this is the latest, I guess. So this is our goal: one vision, one identity, one community. So this is the song for ASEAN, Brunei and Cambodia, Indonesia and Laos, Myanmar, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. We come, we join, we are together. We learn, we love, we believe in each other. We sing, we play, we convey our culture. We are all for Asian. So this song is characterized by Professor Chanarong Pongrung Joy from Thailand, but the lyrics, the base of the song is Indonesian song. So thank you. I hope that that's explained about the AQRF, and hopefully not taking too much time, Eduarda. I give it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megawati, for this brilliant presentation with a song and a very motivating thank you in the end. And actually, you presented not only the AQRF, but also important elements of the national qualifications frameworks of 4 countries with this very interesting typology, type 1, 2, and 3. It's an interesting perspective. Thanks for bringing in this dimension of analysis. I'd like then to ask colleagues, would you like to make a small break of 2 minutes before we continue, or is it okay? Can we move on to Ireland? Okay. If you are all still with energy, or you need 2 minutes to take a coffee or a glass of water, but you are, of course, this is a bit informal, so you can always take a little break. If everyone agrees, then allow me then to invite our colleague, Dr. John O'Connor. He is from Ireland, the National Framework of Qualifications. John is the representative of Ireland, QQI, at the advisory group of the European Qualifications Framework. He has a lot of experience. He has been involved in a lot of international debates, projects, and he has accepted to share with us the state of play of this framework with a long experience that is nonetheless, despite the long experience, reinventing itself in a way, let's say, debating new questions, new challenges for the present and the future. John, if you would like to share your screen and take the floor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduarda. Hello, and hello, colleagues. It's good to see you all, and thanks very much for the invitation to talk to you today. I hope you can all hear me. You will be grateful that I am not going to sing. Trying to follow on from Mega, you should be thankful that I won't try and do that. What I will try and do maybe in 20 minutes or so, I'll try not to get too technical in terms of some of the discussion, but try and give you a sense of a small country. I come from Ireland. We're a small country at the edge of a big continent, Europe. We have about 5 million people. We don't have oil or other valuable minerals. So our main asset is people. There are a lot of young people. And I suppose because of that, education and training has always been important. And we've often exported our young people who get educated and go and work or study elsewhere. Thankfully, a lot of them come back home. So we're a small country, but I think we've been very international and looking outwards. And I'll try and maybe build that into what I'll say today, looking at a national framework and what we did, how we did things, maybe what might have worked and what we think maybe didn't work, but also have a look at, from a small country's perspective, look at a regional qualifications framework in Europe and to think about, well, what value did that have? How does our national framework relate to a regional qualifications framework? How can we contribute to the regional qualifications framework? And how can that regional qualifications framework contribute to us? So the first thing I'll say, which I think is important, is my institution or my organization obviously influences the way we think about qualifications and qualifications frameworks. So I work in a public agency, part of our Ministry of Education and Skills. It's called Quality and Qualifications Ireland. So the title tells you what we do. We are a quality assurance agency in post-school education and training, but we're also the qualifications body. We regulate qualifications, we manage the national framework of qualifications, we actually are an awarding body as well, ourselves. We provide the international recognition service of foreign qualifications. So if people bring qualifications to Ireland, we're the body that gives an advice on the comparability of that qualification with the national system. And we also engage quite a lot, as Eduardo said, European developments. But I think institutions matter. We didn't always have this institutional arrangements. When we started our framework back in 1999, we created a qualifications authority. Its only job was to develop a qualifications framework. But over time, we've changed the institutional arrangements, and the latest experiment is to bring quality assurance and qualifications and recognition all together in a single agency that was established in 2012. So still quite new, but the idea was that it would lead to more integrated qualification system, integrated processes around qualifications and quality assurance. But I think it's important to say at the start what my institution, where I'm coming from in terms of my institutional declaration. The Irish National Framework of Qualifications, and you might notice that we don't say NQF, National Qualifications Framework, we say National Framework of Qualifications in Ireland, because it was originally intended to be a national framework for all qualifications. So it's not just about national qualifications or public qualifications. It was meant to be an open, inclusive, comprehensive qualifications framework. And that's why we probably still use the expression national framework for qualifications. I gave some of its main features there on this slide. It was intended to do a number of different things. So I suppose these were the original aspirations for our national framework, a system, 10-level system to classify qualifications in Ireland. And that's an important function, I think, that transparency function, presenting the system in a transparent way, promotes the use of learning outcomes. You're familiar with that philosophy or paradigm shift towards the use of learning outcomes, defining the relationship between qualifications, and so that people can see pathways or connections. We don't want to have dead ends or cul-de-sacs in qualifications. We want to have valuable pathways within and throughout the education and training system. Quality assurance is important, as other people have said. The qualifications framework should promote public confidence. So if people see that qualification is part of a national qualifications framework that's regulated and quality assured, they can have confidence in that qualification. And that could be for learners, for parents, for investors, for governments. We also thought that qualifications framework would facilitate the recognition of qualifications, particularly international qualifications. So qualifications that might be presented in Ireland, qualifications frameworks are useful instruments for giving recognition advice. And we find also, because Ireland has a framework of qualifications, and holders of qualifications from Ireland go to other countries. They go to France, they go to Lithuania, they go to South Africa, they go to New Zealand. Because we have a qualifications framework, and particularly when those countries have qualifications framework, we do remove a lot of the obstacles that might occur to international mobility and recognition of academic recognition of qualifications. And lastly, I suppose the national framework was meant and intended to be a policy instrument for lifelong learning. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but a lot of the early language around our national framework was around lifelong learning, and the framework was intended to be a driver of lifelong learning in Ireland. In hindsight, that may have been too ambitious, but let's give you some idea of what we were trying to do. Looking back over, so we had our national framework was introduced in 2003, so almost 20 years ago. So it's one of the early qualifications frameworks, along with countries like South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, France, the UK. But looking back, we can maybe draw three conclusions. One, implementation. So as you know, implementation requires legislation, but in Ireland, legislation on its own doesn't get things done in education. So partnership and consensus and agreement is always the way that we have reform or change in education and training. The key bodies that implement the framework are the awarding bodies, the providers, quality assurance bodies. They really, because they have to redesign programs, redesign qualifications so that they are framework compliant. So they deliver, I suppose, the national framework of qualifications to users or to learners. Legislation has always been important for us to having a statutory basis. We've been lucky in that we got 3 goes at our legislation in 1999, in 2012, and also again last year. So normally government don't like you coming back to get your legislation changed so often, but it's been useful because institutional arrangements may need to be changed, or the role of the qualifications framework may change over time. So legislation has to be fit for purpose. The use of the national framework in Ireland is quite widespread. You can see a lot of use. Students in schools will use it when they're selecting courses in higher education. They'll select level 7 or level 8 courses. Employers often use the framework when they describe qualification requirements for jobs. Researchers use the framework quite a lot because it's now an official classification in our statistics system. So that's kind of a significant use that our statistics agency use the national framework to report on output from the education and training system. The guidance community, very important brokers of the framework, so they use it to explain qualification system to learners. Recognition authorities, regulators, funding bodies, policymakers. So I'd say there's widespread use of the framework. You'll see it referenced a lot in education labor market information. So implementation, we think, is quite good. There's a lot of use, but use does not necessarily mean useful effects or consequences or impact. So on the last point there on impact, I think that's the one that we're looking at more and more. We've developed a national framework, it's implemented, it's widely used, but then the question arises, do these things make a difference? Do they address real problems? Do they deliver the aspirations that we have for them? And we've done some work on this, independent assessments, and definitely we see some evidence that frameworks can improve transparency for sure. So their communications effect are quite powerful. In terms of the quality of qualifications, lifelong learning, mobility and recognition, some evidence that these objectives are, that the qualifications framework can make a contribution to these kind of policy aspirations, but I think we're still figuring out that. One thing that's for sure, qualifications frameworks on their own don't create significant changes in quality or lifelong learning or mobility or recognition or equality or whatever the other big policy issues are for education. They are a useful instrument. They contribute to these policy objectives. Quality, for example, I mean, the teachers are the main element in quality. In quality assurance, the quality of your education training system can't exceed the quality of teachers in your system. So that's the fundamental element. So qualifications frameworks have a role, but there are lots of other things that drive these kind of policy objectives. So I think on impact, it's interesting to think about that, and interesting to think about it early when we're developing qualifications frameworks. Ireland didn't think about impact early on. It's only now we're thinking about impact. This is an image of our national framework of qualifications. So it's not, some people say this is your framework, but this is just an image, a useful image for communicating the framework. And maybe what I'll say is it's got 10 levels. So, and you'll see along the outside, we've got qualification types along here, bachelor's degrees or school leaving certificates, well-known qualifications. Let's go back to that one. But you'll also see qualification types. So we have large qualifications like a master's degree or a doctoral degree. We also have designed our framework with smaller qualifications, minor awards, supplemental and special purpose. These were designed to have flexible solutions for recognizing smaller pieces of learning. There's a lot of discussion these days around micro-credentials and smaller bodies of learning. And maybe these smaller qualification types were an early prototype of micro-credentials. The 10-level system, qualification types and classes of qualifications, major qualifications, but also non-major qualifications or smaller qualifications. As I said, we've always been looking outward to other developments, and Europe and the EU have always been influential in our thinking around qualifications and qualifications frameworks. So you can see the 10-level framework in Ireland, we have aligned it with 2 European regional frameworks. So in Europe, you have the European Qualifications Framework, an 8-level system for lifelong learning. But we also have the qualifications framework for the European higher education area, which looks at bachelor's or first cycle, master's, PhD, and short cycle or sub-degree qualifications. So we had to do two pieces of work. One, to align our 10-level system to the 8-level European qualifications framework, and also to align the higher education qualifications in our system with the European qualifications framework for the European higher education area, or the Bologna framework. So there are two regional qualifications frameworks in Europe. We've done work to officially align our national system with both of those European systems. Just on that piece of referencing or aligning or relating a national system to a regional system, it's worth maybe reflecting on the rules that we've come up with. In Europe, at least, we've come up with some criteria to establish a robust, strong relationship between a national framework and the European or a regional qualifications framework. Now, Ireland had its qualifications framework before the European qualifications framework and before Bologna. So we had to relate our 10-level system to these regional qualification systems. That wasn't difficult. The number of levels wasn't difficult. And I would say for Ireland, 10 levels works. I know lots of other countries in Europe may be influenced by EQF, 8-level system, designed 8-level national systems. I would say, well, what was needed in Ireland was 10 levels. We wanted to introduce some new levels at the elementary level where there were no qualifications before. The below lower secondary education level. So that was an important policy objective for us. And so it's not problematic to relate a 10-level system to an 8-level system. And so for us, it was important that how many levels for Ireland worked well. What was our system already like? I was listening to Jeffy early on, and he was talking about converting or moving a national qualification system to a national qualifications framework. And so there already was the system. There already is a national system. And then we're making that more explicit by using a national framework. But we didn't necessarily change the system to fit into a new framework. The framework settled on top of the national system. But when doing the regional work, when we're establishing a relationship within the Irish framework and the European framework, these are the expectations. So they're worth thinking about that. For a successful referencing, what we have to do is describe the institutional governance and policy landscape for our qualification system. We have to show that we have a real qualifications framework and that it's based on learning outcomes. It can't just be a fiction or a theoretical framework. It has to be real. It has to have a lifelong learning orientation, so recognition of prior learning and credit systems are important. We have to do detailed technical mapping. So if we're showing a level-to-level correspondence between our level descriptors and European level descriptors, we have to do that in a way that convinces people. We have to have clear processes for how we assign a level to any qualification. How do we populate the framework? What procedures do we have for giving qualifications a level? That's a really important criterion doing this work. Quality assurance, as earlier speakers have said, your national framework is embedded or supported or referenced in national quality assurance. Make that explicit. The relationship should be visible. So you might see it in certificates, you might see it in registers, and we would do that. So on a qualification certificate in Ireland, you'll have a national framework level, you'll have a European qualifications framework level. And in qualification supplements, you'll have information about these regional relationships. On register qualifications, we'll also include the European, the regional levels attached to qualifications. qualifications. But it's important to remember you only get the regional benefit by going through the national qualifications framework. So qualifications only get a European status in Ireland by going through the national framework of qualifications. Another criteria that's important for regional referencing in Europe is that you show that your qualifications framework is not a secret, it's not a bureaucratic administrative instrument that people don't know about it. It's a living, dynamic tool that people are engaged with, and they support the referencing exercise with education and training partners, social partners, other bodies. Peer review is really important. So when we do a report that presents evidence about the relationship between our national framework and European frameworks, we use international experts who will write their own independent commentary on the extent to which our national report is authentic, is accurate, is true, and supports a strong relationship between the national framework and the European framework. So that element of peer review is, so we think these criteria are fair. We think they're useful. I think it's useful to keep them under review as we look at referencing and regional referencing, but they've been working quite well for us now, and they tend to give trusted, useful outcomes in Europe, at least, by using these criteria. So maybe final reflections, maybe looking back on our experience, we've made plenty of mistakes that I'm happy to share at this stage. First off, I'll say, and then ETF have done some very good work on this space when they talked about getting ready for qualifications frameworks, I think, and they talked about the importance of institutions and legislation, quality assurance, stakeholder engagement, and I think we probably wish we had that advice 20 years ago when we were starting off on doing this kind of work. But that kind of work is really good, and I would agree, laws matter, institutions matter, stakeholder engagement have mattered for us for sure. NFQ, yes, you've got laws, yes, you've got policies, you've got texts, but ultimately frameworks, I think, are an idea. They're quite a powerful idea, and people have to buy into the idea. If people don't trust the idea, or they don't have confidence in the idea of a framework, it's not going to work, no matter what rules or regulations or policy texts we have about frameworks. So I like this idea. It's just as much a social as a technical construct. We've had issues in Ireland too about levelling qualifications. You have interests who can be quite powerful. You've got issues of parity of esteem. You've got issues of pay linked to qualifications. So you have all that political dimension also in designing a qualifications framework in terms of whose qualification sits where. Again, just picking up on what Mozambique were saying, qualification system already exists in frameworks in some way, make it more explicit or more transparent. In Ireland, we can't centrally steer the system. We can't just do it by laws. Pragmatism, solving problems and consensus is the way we built our framework. That means we've had to make compromises on the way. That means we've had to fudge things along the way. And sometimes you have to go back. You have to find a useful enough solution, whether it's to do with levelling or including a qualification, but you can come back later on and revisit that. And that's the way we've done things, because you don't want a big issue around the levelling of a particular qualification to stop all progress. So you have to have integrity in the piece of work, but you have to have momentum as well to keep the piece of work moving on. Never too early to think about evaluation. We really didn't think about evaluation early on. We really didn't think about how would we know if our framework works. We never thought about what the success really looked like 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line. We're doing things again, I'd say we think about evaluation much earlier. Regional qualifications frameworks can be really influential. For us, we've gained a lot by participating in the European developments. You're getting a regional lens or a regional view on your national issues. And sometimes you could even use that regional lens or perspective to move things on, to shine a light on things in a national context. And that can be quite useful. And definitely in Ireland, it can be useful to bring a European view or a lens to particular issues that we want to advance in Ireland. Policy learning, not policy borrowing. I don't need to tell you that, but we can learn things from others. We never try to copy or mimic or import solutions from elsewhere. Education and training is very contextually rooted in history and society and politics in every country. So it's nice to look around and see what other people are doing, but you have to find our own solutions that are going to work in our own context. There is now, and there wasn't when we were doing the earlier work on frameworks, there's a lot more expertise now in Africa. There's a lot of very influential people and policymakers in Africa that are influencing developments in Europe. And there are agencies, ETF is a good example, in Europe with an awful lot of expertise built up by the way, because they look a lot across lots of countries and they can produce synthesis kind of reports, and that's really useful expertise and knowledge that's growing all the time, and it can be useful to use that. I think a final point too is that qualifications frameworks are not, sometimes in Ireland, when we talk about the framework, people say, wasn't that done? That was done years ago. It can be taken for granted. But I think they have to be dynamic and alert to changes and developments in policy. For example, there are some people now talking about the end of qualifications. We're going to move to other ways of representing learning. There's a digital revolution going on. People won't want 3, 4, 5 year qualifications anymore. People want faster, quicker, smarter credentials to recognize their learning. I don't think that's going to happen, but qualifications frameworks, they can't be disconnected from the big policy issues and the big challenges in labor markets. They must show that they can make a useful contribution to real world problems and challenges these days around digitalization, around rapid solutions for upskilling and reskilling. If qualifications frameworks are not connected to the big problems or issues in our societies and education and training, well then they just become bureaucratic instruments that will be held in low regard. So I think keeping them alert and responsive to national developments, I think is good. So yeah, so we've learned some things around the way. We've got some things right. We've made plenty of mistakes, which I'm happy to share. And I think that's it from me. Yep, there's a last picture of southwest coast of Ireland. So when the current pandemic is over and you're thinking of going someplace, you'd be very welcome over here. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, John. I would like to invite our participants, all of you, to give a round of applause to our 3 speakers. Can we do it? Show please your, open your cameras. Let's give a round of applause to Jeffy, John, and Mega. This is also possible online. This is also possible through these remote meetings. Thanks very much. We learned so much today from these 3 sessions, 3 experiences, with a number of common issues, of common developments, of common thinking also. We see change happening also with qualifications frameworks. They have to stay connected with the matters, with the issues that really matter, to stay relevant, sustainable. And we have now our final session for discussion, and it will be then constructed in the following way. So first of all, we welcome 4 or 5 minutes comments, impressions by Professor Zwimbo, the CEO of ZIMCE, so Zimbabwe Council for Higher Education. He has been analyzing the 3 presentations, and he would like to share with us his impressions, his main kind of crisp points of view. What is it that he retains and he would like perhaps to pursue also in his own institution? So Professor, you have 4 or 5 minutes for your enlightening comments. And then we will also ask all of you to have your mobile phones with internet connection ready. And we will do a very simple, interesting exercise of interaction and collecting your impressions and responses to just 3 questions at the end of this webinar today. Peter Dzimbo, would you like to share with us your main impressions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you very much to all our presenters. I think the learning curve for somebody like me has been very steep, but here is what I have taken from all the all the presentations, is that I think there is now a general understanding that the linkages between early childhood education, primary education, secondary education, vocational and technical education, and then a higher and tertiary education, that these linkages are now seamless. This is what I have gotten from the presentations. And I think this, for us in the Zimbabwean case, we obviously have come in at a later stage than most other countries, but that's where we are going. Number 2, I have noted that the emphasis is on learning outcomes. That's what I heard from everybody else who was talking. And I think this is the future, and this is the way to go. We are also focusing ourselves in the Zimbabwean scenario on learning outcomes as a basis for developing the national qualification frameworks. The final point I just want to make is what I didn't hear from everybody that talked, what I didn't hear, this new normal that we are in, which has been brought to us by COVID-19 pandemic, no one really knows what's going to happen tomorrow. If it is going to stay with us, like what we have now seen in certain parts of United States, Florida, for example, and here on the African continent, what is happening in our neighbor in South Africa, are these national qualification frameworks going to take into account this new normal? That I didn't hear. Secondly, are these national qualification frameworks going to take into account the demand that has been brought about by COVID for the utilization of information and communication technologies? And for us on the African continent, the question is, with the current disparities in access to ICTs across the African continent, the question is whether NQF within the new normal. So that's what I didn't hear, but because I only got 4 minutes, I want to stop here and say thank you very much to all our presenters. I think we all learned, but one thing we saw is that comparatively speaking, most of the countries that we heard from, the construction of the national qualification frameworks are more or less the same. There are different emphases here and there. I was very keen on listening to the ASEAN presentation to see what was the role of the national qualification framework within the broad ambit of education to the developments that have taken place, especially in countries such as Malaysia and Singapore. And I think a little bit was beginning to come out. And Mr. O'Connor, you know, the Irish presentation, I listened attentively because you did emphasize that what you have are your people. You don't have these kinds of natural resources that you see from other countries. And I did learn, you know, quite a lot. And I think the takeaway for all of us is that the human resource is a critical resource that we ought to capitalize on. So thank you very much. Muito obrigada, muito obrigado. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter, for your points. We took note of everything, and this will be part, of course, of the report. Thanks for interrelating the various experiences and for pointing out once again, as it was already done by some participants at the previous workshop, that the new normal created and imposed, let's say, by the pandemic has to be somehow debated in the context of this discussion on qualifications frameworks, national and regional. And probably we will have to organize perhaps a half webinar dedicated to discussing that point with all of you. So thanks very much for again underlining the need to have this debate. I would like then, as said earlier, to lead us then to, let's say, the almost end of this session, of this webinar today. And to do it, let us interact a little bit through Mentimeter. And we will do it in a very simple manner. Do not worry, it will not take too much time. And since Mentimeter, since we have to use, of course, English and French, we prepared first a very short presentation that simply shows the questions. And then my colleague Sylvia, who is managing the Mentimeter itself, will then lead us into the actual exercise that will also be just 7-10 minutes, not more than that. So thanks very much for your patience. So now I again share screen. And let us see then the presentation of the questions, just for you to understand which are these questions. So this is the interactive moment now. And we would like you all to start preparing your mobile phones with internet connection and access the web link you see there on the top, www.menti.com. And you will find a place to insert a code. And the code is also indicated on the slide, 825541. But do not yet start the exercise. Let us first read the questions. So you have the questions there on the screen, on one side in English and the other side in French. You will then have the same questions in the exercise in Mentimeter. We start with question 1 in English. In your view, which are the 3 most important factors for successful NQF implementation based on the 3 cases shared today? And so you will write your up to 3 words, each one of you up to 3 words or expressions, but do not start yet, please. And then you can see in the square next the translation into French. So, selon vous, quels sont les facteurs les plus importants pour la mise en œuvre réussie des cadres de certification sur la base des 3 cas partagés aujourd'hui? Donc, 3 mots ou 3 expressions, mais ne commencez pas encore. Donc, la deuxième question est la question suivante. The second question is the following. And this is a multiple choice question. So NQFs contribute to transparency of qualifications. What does this mean concretely? And there you have 4 options, 4 responses. Qualifications are trusted. This is the first option. Qualifications are relevant for the labor market. This is the second option. Qualifications support citizens' lifelong learning, third option. Or qualifications are based on clear learning outcomes. And please, you will choose only one of these options. And though you have the question 2 in French next just for clarification. The same questions will appear when my colleague Sylvia will then show the Mentimeter application itself. So question 2 is multiple choice and you choose only one response. Then the question 3. It's the question for you, the stakeholders of the ACQF. And it is the following. What should be the most important added value contributions of the ACQF for the African people at national or regional or continental levels? And again, here you will simply write words, your 3 most important wishes, expectations about the ACQF for the African people. So in French, la question 3 sera: quelles devraient être les principales contributions de valeur ajoutée du cadre continental africain de certification pour les peuples d'Afrique au niveau national, régional ou continental? Et s'il vous plaît, aidez-nous, écrivez vos 3 principales attentes, ce que vous voulez de ce ACQF pour les peuples d'Afrique. 3 mots ou 3 expressions. And now I stop sharing this presentation, the purpose of which was just to show the questions we would like you to respond to through the Mentimeter app. Did you all already connect to www.mentimeter.com? And this is the code that you will use. And so now my colleague Sylvia will lead us and allow us to start responding. Thank you. First question. So the 3 success factors for NQF implementation. Just write words or expressions. What is important for a successful implementation of an NQF, in your view? Is it all clear? Did you find all the app? Okay, very well. I see that it's coming. Excellent.
Alors,
okay. So you can write in French, obviously, please.
d'accord, c'est donc je n'ai pas conversation. Key success factor for 3 facteurs clés de la réussite. باش نكتب هابط الكريديج مش كونفرس écrire.
Okay, I see. Okay, the number of colleagues connected is increasing, 10 persons we have now, and some of the ideas are particularly emphasized, such as reliability, commitment, trust also, but we also see buy-in, needs-oriented, responsive, partnership, vision, knowledge, people-oriented. Thank you. 13 persons, 13 participants. We still have 1 minute if you want to still add those who didn't connect yet, and you still have time to connect. www.menti.com, and then you use the code 825541. And the first question is just writing down words, expressions. Thank you. We wait still another 30 seconds. Those who are still joining this last exercise, it's a sort of a light assessment. What is it that you consider fundamental from the experiences we debated today? Reliability continues to be the biggest. Trust, commitment, mutual trust. Do not reply yet to the other questions, colleagues. We will go there. We will lead you to the next question. Thank you. We have already 16, 17 participants responding. Excellent. Transparency, transparence, transparence. Commitment is also big there. That's very good. Commitment. Oh, I see parity. I like this one. Real world view. That's nice. We will keep all these results and they will be part of the report. So this is your view on what really matters for the successful implementation of your national qualifications frameworks. Colleagues, this is your own voice expressed here. I don't know if we still wait for 18th colleague who would like to still join the exercise. We are now 17 persons participating. Okay. Sylvia, would you like then to move to the next question? Yes, thank you. And this question, you need to choose one, just one of the responses of multiple choice. What does this mean? Transparency of qualifications. What does this mean? Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? La transparence des certifications. What is the meaning in your view? There are 4 options in your mobile phones you can see, and you can choose one. Okay, interesting. Okay. So we see there is a strong predominance of opinions concerning on the option qualifications are based on clear learning outcomes. I think this is very, very good. This means that everybody really buys in this very important element. And this means a little bit of a paradigm shift in education and training. So that qualifications are based on clear learning outcomes. 11 responses have 12 already on this option. There is another option selected by 4 persons, including myself, which is qualifications supports citizens' lifelong learning, in red, and 1 participant selected qualifications are trusted. In a way, these qualifications are trusted somehow summarizes the notion of transparency of qualifications. So we have 19 participants now online sharing their opinions on this question. Oh, 20, we have 20 now, thank you. 21 perhaps coming. Colleagues, you can all participate, whatever your institution. Also the speakers, I hope they are participating. John, Megawati, of course, Jeffy, Anna Maria Nyampul. Now we have one additional, one interesting point also made here. 2 participants are choosing qualifications are relevant for the labor market as the representation of transparency of qualifications. So 16 have, in any case, preferred qualifications are based on clear learning outcomes. And learning outcomes are the language, let's say, linking labor market and education and training. So in a way, it also covers the relevance of qualifications for the labor market, and the trust. Okay, if you 23 colleagues participating, that's very good. Thank you. Now we can move to the last question, and this is the last question for you, stakeholders of the ACQF. How do you see this ACQF making a difference for the people of Africa? What is it that you believe it can make to make a difference? Please write your 3 words or 3 expressions. What is it that you want for your continent? Thank you. Okay, harmonization, okay. Decent life, oh, that one is very good. I like that. 4, 5, everybody can contribute, please. Mobility, harmonization is high, is very high. Mutualisation. This was the last question. We have 17 participants now contributing to this last question. And we see the terms mobility, harmonization, very high among the preferences, but also equality, lifelong learning, mutualisation, employability, competitivité. We have decent life, benchmarking. I think it's very interesting. Okay, so high quality education, thank you. Development, harmony, easy mobility, renforcement des capacités, trust, of course, trust, mutual trust is always there. Thank you so much for all these brilliant proposals for the ACQF as advantages of the ACQF for the people, for the African people. 22 participants have contributed so far, and then we will soon finalize. Thank you so much for this contribution. If anyone else is still joining, well, otherwise we can start. Then we will ask our colleague Sylvia to please show us the composite results of this exercise. The 3 questions, the results to the 3 questions. So reliability, trust, were the two most important: mutual trust, transparency, commitment. So these are the important factors for success of NQF implementation. Thank you. You all took note, okay? So now we have the summary of the responses to the second question. And so, transparency of qualifications, or transparence des certifications, ça veut dire qu'elles sont basées, or they are based on clear learning outcomes. But of course, the other options are also important. So this notion of clear learning outcomes appears as your preferred, let's say, definition of transparency of qualifications. And I think this is a very, very good signal indicator. Thank you very much. Sylvia, the last one. Okay. Your last, so let's say the expectations on the ACQF for the people of Africa. The most important notions we have here are mobility, harmonization, recognition, lifelong learning, competitivity, quality, trust. Once again, trust is in the three questions, let's say. 22 persons replied to this last question. Thank you. So on this note, I would like just to ask if any of the participants would like to say, express an opinion, an idea, a comment, a desire for the next workshop or on this workshop, please use this opportunity. 1 minute, 2 minutes. You can unmute yourself and speak. Please, Dr. Mariam.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for the clarification of last night. And I want to also seize this opportunity to appreciate all the presenters. They have done a very wonderful job. We have learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mariam, for this very positive. Who else would like to say or share a comment or any questions?
Well, actually,
just unmute yourself and speak.
Pardon?
If you have a comment to share or a question, please unmute yourself.
The only question I want to ask here is that for those countries that are yet to have their education framework, what advice are you advising them? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me? I said for those countries that are yet to have their qualification frameworks, what advice are you giving?
Okay. Thanks very much, Dr. Mariam Salih, for this question. I think this is a very, very fundamental question. It is always asked. So this kind of catalyst role of this ACQF process in supporting the national developments, the national roadmap, the national efforts to develop or consolidate the frameworks. We will have activities in this direction, Dr. Mariam, in 2021 and 2022. Okay. So if Nigeria is interested, we can give you support and advice for example, streamlining the path, the roadmap that you already initiated with your national qualifications framework. Okay. It's a matter of discussing and requesting, and we will continue cooperating with you also in this more, let's say, practical dimension of your national own developments. Okay, and of course, these webinars and the next year's capacity development program will be very much oriented to practical application as well.
All right, thank you.
And we hope to put together this experts network task force ACQF with many of the very experienced African experts with enormous experience on NQF developments in their countries and regions to support each other. Okay, thanks for this very, very important question, Dr. Maria.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we continue to have a much more nuanced and deeper discussion on the impact of COVID?
Yes.
On,
yes.
what we are discussing, because I think that is absent from our discourse. And most of us, this is what we're faced with today.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Kamara, can you send me your email, please? Mr. Emmanuel Kamara. Thank you.
Emmanuel Kamara from Sierra Leone?
Yes, Mr. Kamara Kusher.
Okay.
If you go able to send me your email address, I want to communicate with you.
Okay. Thank you very much, colleagues. I'd like just to, again, thank all of you for all your, let's say, commitment, enthusiasm. We have two clear requests today, again. They have been already echoed in the last session. One is about supporting the national developments. Another one is about including in these debates the COVID, the response, let's say, to COVID. How do NQFs act, react, and make and cope with COVID? What is it that we can bring into this discussion most concretely? So we will try to really schedule these themes in the next webinars. So we will meet again on the 10th of September, and then on the 24th of September. And in October, we have scheduled 3 webinars, so that we can cover a large number of cases, and particularly enter into more in-depth discussion on the African experiences, NQFs, and regional qualifications frameworks. We will have the opportunity to be sharing and to learn from countries, African countries that are developing, that are at the stage of consultation, that are going from subsectors frameworks to integrated frameworks. So the various typologies of situations will be debated, will be shared here. And we will then ask every country to always share with us a little bit about the COVID specific, the pandemic, the reaction to the pandemic in their countries, and how the NQFs are part of this search of solutions, quest of solutions for such a challenging new normal. Then the report of the 2 webinars together will be shared with you next week, Tuesday. So we decided to put the 2 webinars together in one report in order to avoid fragmentation of reports. We have also very interesting conversations in the chat box. You have seen the conversation has been really very active, people asking questions and replying at the same time. So it has become a very good means of continuing the clarifications and sharing after the presentations. And we will take account of all this information that is in the chat box. We will simply paste it directly in the report so that you can follow up. If you have, please do not hesitate, of course, to look up the event web page. You have already a lot of information there. Some of the presentations are already translated into French, not all of them, but 2 of them. We will translate the other 2. And do not hesitate to send us any questions. You have my contact. If you have questions, suggestions, issues, please just send us an email. We will be really, it's very motivating for us also. When you interact, you come back to us and with whatever questions and suggestions you might have. Because this community is exactly the common intelligence, and we highly appreciate this common intelligence of this community. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.
It's very fundamental. If you have holidays or break in August, please enjoy it as possible. And we meet again in September. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Megawati from Indonesia.
Thank you, everyone.
She shared 4 frameworks today. Thank you, Megawati.
Thank you, John.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, John, for your very calm and paused way of presenting and sharing your thoughts. It was brilliant.
No, Eduarda. Take
Jackie
care.
and Ana Maria, everybody is now waiting for the unified qualifications framework, and it will be a present to this community. When you approve it, you come back again to present it and to show all your progress. It will be very, very interesting for everybody. Thanks. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
See
Bye,
you very
Eduarda.
soon.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Please
you.
show
Eduarda.
open
Good
your
night.
cameras. We want to see you
Thank
all.
you,
All these
Eduarda.
things. Bye. Maxwell, how are you doing? Are you feeling better? You have your hand
Yes.
raised. You want to share?
Yes, I wanted to make a point, a quick one. I am a bit concerned. I gathered from one of the presentations the importance of regional qualifications frameworks to, the potential impact of it. But it looks like the West African sub-region, we have done nothing at all about regional frameworks. So I don't know if some encouragement will go to West Africa, especially our big brothers, Nigeria. We all come together to sort that out, because as you can see, West Africa, there's nothing like that to look at. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Maxwell. Maxwell, he represents Ghana, and he has made these important points. So the question, what about ECOWAS? So
yes,
the West African.
ECOWAS.
West African. Is it also going in the direction of developing a regional qualifications framework? We will ask ECOWAS also to share experience. And normally, ECOWAS representatives are always participating in these webinars.
Yeah.
They have been invited nationally, obviously, and we will invite them to share the most important achievements or plans and roadmap concerning such an endeavor, an ECOWAS qualifications framework. Thanks very much for this point, Maxwell.
You're welcome.
Maxwell, I hope you are feeling better. I know you had malaria, and hope
yes,
is better now.
It was very scary, because it's very similar symptoms to COVID. So very, very scary, but I'm much better.
Hope you are feeling better right now, Maxwell.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you
better.
very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Again, a big thank you to our speakers, including Peter from Zimbabwe, for your impressions. Crisp, sharp, and very clear. Bye, everybody. And see you again in September. We will miss you all. We will miss each other. We are now like a family, a community.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Having you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Slava. I want to say also a special thank you to Slava from CDFOP. Slava, maybe there will be a chance for you to share some news with us at one of the next workshops. Slava has been with us already twice. She's a very brilliant NQF expert with enormous experience with regional qualifications frameworks. Thank you so much, everybody. Goodbye. Also to our colleague in China. Thank you.